I drive because I love my children on the bus. I started off driving to be at home with my children on snow days and holidays. And in that 24-year time that I've been with the county, I have enjoyed every child on my bus and the families and the connections I've met.
Why do I drive? I drive because of the students. It's those students that make my day. You make relationship with these students, and even after they graduate from high school, they'll come up and give you a hug and let you know that they appreciate you and what you did.
I love driving a school bus because I had a school bus driver that I admired, and I always watched her, and she was a great person, and that challenged me to be a good bus driver. And I was a trainer for 2 years for Roanoke County, and I loved it. I enjoyed showing people what I do.
This is a family. We consider ourselves part of the transportation family. And once you become part of the family, you stay part of the family. We learn about each other's family, we support each other, we're there for each other, and we have fun while we're doing it. We get to help the students, we get to be there for them and support them.
I drive the school bus because I wanted to have some adult interaction as a stay-at-home mom. I wanted to get out, and driving with Roanoke County, I have great students. I've enjoyed this nearly 20 years now, and I also like being a part of the community, and they trust me with their kids, and I enjoy being with my students.
I enjoy driving. The best part about driving the school bus is the children that I pick up every day.
Why?
Because they keep me younger. I'm 78 years old. They keep me younger.
I retired from public service, and I stayed at home and did all my honeydews, and basically I got bored. And I wanted something to do. My wife was a teacher, so this allowed me to have money and time off during the summer.
We do this to have something to do. A lot of our drivers are retirees, and they come out to do their community service and have a routine and have a reason to get up in the morning, and they get a little extra fun money to go on vacation and that kind of stuff. So it's a great job.
My best friend's been driving for over 10 years, and he said, look, if you're going to work part-time, you might as well make as much money as you can. And for a part-time job, it pays pretty good for this area. I enjoy the elementary kids more than I do anything, but it's been a lot of fun.
People tell me that how can you drive kids, and I'm like, hey, that's the best part of the job. The rest of it's a piece of cake. So, but I really enjoy, driving, and keeps me active, gets me up in the morning.
I drive the school bus because I love it. It's an awesome job. I love going and picking up the students, watching them get on the bus, the little ones with the big smiles on their face, wondering, all the excitement they're going to be doing while they're going to school, middle, high school. I drive all ages. It's just a wonderful job.
I drive because I'm retired Navy, and it's great, after serving my country, to give back to my community. Our kids are the future of America, and it's great to have a part to where I'm contributing to them and to make sure that they get what they need.
We will train you from the get-go. We should be able to help you through the whole process of getting your learner's permit, getting your endorsements, and then we have a 24-hour classroom training that we do, and then we do your 24-hour on-the-road training. So we do all of it in-house. All you need to do is come with a love for children.
All right, good evening, everyone. We're going to reconvene our meeting. We were in closed session. It started at 5:30. May I have some read us out of closed, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that the Roanoke County School Board come out of closed session for the following: to discuss ongoing personnel matters under investigation pursuant to the personnel exemption at 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia, and for consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members pertaining to actual or probable litigation and consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to 2.2-3711A7 of the Code of Virginia. And I also move to certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under this chapter, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the school board.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk, the roll.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Since there is no action from closed, we'll begin the public portion of the meeting. Would you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Presentations and recognitions, 5.01, recognition of the month of February 2021 as School Board Appreciation Month. Superintendent Nicely.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Want to congratulate the school board and express our appreciation for all the work that our school board does in honor of School Board Appreciation Month. Several of the schools have decorated the room this evening, and so it's very nice to see those expressions of appreciation. I would like to read the official proclamation from the state in honor of School Board Appreciation Month. Whereas the education of Virginia's school-age children is the foundation upon which the economic, social, and intellectual strength of our Commonwealth is built, whereas locally elected and locally appointed school board members play an important and vital role in our representative democracy, as the decisions of local school boards directly influence instruction in Virginia's public schools, whereas the leadership of our school boards affect the development and future of our children and ensure that students are prepared to compete in local, state, national, and global economies, whereas local school boards devote themselves to providing a high-quality education for all students in the Commonwealth, whereas this year's theme, 115 years of providing leadership, advocacy, and support, reflects the partnership of the Virginia School Boards Association with local school board members as they serve their local divisions and advocate for public education with local, state, and federal leaders on behalf of students, whereas school board members work with parents, businesses, education professionals, and other community members to create the educational vision we want for our students, whereas the Commonwealth of Virginia is proud of our education system and appreciates the efforts of local school board members to make the Virginia public school system an excellent place in which to educate our youth, whereas School Board Appreciation Month recognizes school board members for their leadership and support of a public school system from which the entire Commonwealth benefits. Now, therefore, I, Ralph Northam, do hereby recognize February 2021 as School Board Appreciation Month in our Commonwealth of Virginia and call this observance to the attention of all citizens. And we have certificates for each school board member, so if you want to come up and have a group photo, all right, I'm going to invite you to do that.
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Thanks.
We'll put one in the budget.
Those guys are ugly.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Nicely. Okay, item number 5.02, recognition of February 2021 as CET month, focus on instruction. Mr. Jason Sir.
Chairman,
Again.
members of the board, appreciate it. And along with School Board Appreciation, February has been recognized by our governor as CTE month. The governor's written recognition is provided to you in printed form and attached to the agenda in board docs. I think Chuck's pulled it up there. I encourage you to read the recognition when you have time. Otherwise, we might have too many whereases tonight. I encourage you to read it over when you get time. Over the years, the school board has supported a robust array of CTE course offerings, and those are taught in our 5 middle schools, 5 high schools, and at Burton Center. Thousands of our students are being taught by 64 outstanding CTE teachers in 6 different CTE areas. Also, the CTE department collaborates with 2 neighboring school divisions on the Registered Apprenticeship Program, of which you're familiar. And I've got to shamelessly plug this right now. We just kicked off our sponsor showcase this past Monday for students and parents. If you're watching or listening in, please check out the showcase website on the CTE website on the CTE homepage. In recognition of CTE month, we wanted you to hear from some of our students' perspectives on what CTE training means to them. Before we go to a little video montage, I wanted to mention that Ashley Patterson, a senior at Northside High School and a Burton Center student in the EMT program, was recently featured by SLS 10 for the application of the EMT skills she's learning at Burton Center while working with Holland's Volunteer Fire and Rescue, one of the reasons we do what we do. The following video compilation highlights CTE students from across the country. It'll take just a few minutes.
When I was little, I had to go to the hospital because my appendix ruptured, and all the nurses there were so kind and everything, so I wanted to be a nurse to help other kids out. So I really liked the experience because I want to go into college, so I wanted a little bit of taste of nursing to make sure that's what I wanted to major in before I go to college. So I feel like it's important to have a class like this or like cosmetology. That way, like, you get to learn what you want to do in the future and you get to learn that.
We can do our certifications here, so you can get your certifications for welding, which you don't have to go to school for. So you can get your certifications and you could get into a job, and then it could lead into a career for you. We've had a lot of people in this class who's gotten jobs right out of high school, who's making good money and didn't go to school for it. It's a lot of math in it. You have to know the measurements and angles that you're going to do. So like geometry helped a lot in this class of doing angles and finding how you're going to fit something up and got to measure and subtract and everything else. I was struggling with geometry, and then I started putting it into welding, and it helped me get my grades up, and then it helped me in here too.
It definitely really helps with hands-on learning. Like, for example, culinary, you are really you're cooking many different things, and that would really help if you were to become a chef or to work in a restaurant, because then you'll have experience on what to do. They apply real life situations, more than our core classes do. Accounting is basically if you want to be an accountant, that's what you need to do, and it's basically the same thing. Well, my core math classes really help me with accounting because accounting isn't quite as difficult as my math class, and I'm able to add and subtract numbers a lot faster because of my core classes.
I think it definitely does help. In the case of the marketing class, even though we're kind of learning just kind of the broad surface of various topics, it still kind of gives me a heads up and a kind of an upper leg versus the other marketing students when I get into my core classes. Because when we delve deeper into those classes in my major, to have the groundwork pre-established and know some of what we're talking about and understanding the concepts definitely helps me in those classes in the future. Definitely does help. A lot of the groundwork we've done in classes such as history or English, things such as writing or soft skills or anything of those sorts, kind of establishing them into woodshop or any of these other extracurricular CTE classes has definitely helped as far as just having a broader range of understanding, more critical thinking skills, and I can apply myself in various projects that we do in those classes.
I like drawing and designing stuff, and marketing kind of like spoke out to me, I guess. Well, now I can get like some experience in computers and understanding the technology and how to work a computer more. And I mean, it's beneficial because you can learn earlier than later.
I think in our future, they're going to be really useful to use and like have, because in our future, there's most likely going to be a lot of programming work and stuff in the technology industry, and I think it'd help a lot of people to start learning at a younger age, so it comes more natural when you're older. It helps you make connections, and it just helps you understand math and everything that it's used for, because some people are like, oh, I'm bored in math, this isn't fun, but you learn what it can be used for and how you can make math and technology, and it's all really fun.
Well, I learned a lot of things that actually helped me, like, because I have siblings, and we got to do fun things together. I got to learn, like, how to make food for myself, how to be a little bit more independent. I helped my parents with a lot of things, so I got to make pepperoni rolls, and those are my favorites. I also got to make pretzels, and they're, like, easy things to make. So I thought it was really fun and interesting, because I wasn't, like, just sitting down, and I actually got to get up and do things. So that was really fun.
If I'm more confident, then I don't have to, like, you know, just go back to the same things, eat the same things every day. I can, like, try something new and be more open to learning new things.
So there you go, just some snippets from some of our students here recently. As you can see, even with the COVID restrictions, the students are still learning a lot in their CTE classes, and in recognition of School Board Appreciation Month as well. Thank you, school board members, for your continued support of CTE. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Jason. Sir.
Thank you. All right, moving on, agenda item number 6. We're at a portion of hearing of citizens and delegations. Since I see that everyone here is someone who's been here before, I'll just forego reading all the rules on the paper that you signed. The first up is Dr. Corey Franklin. Just when you come up, Dr. Franklin, just state your name and your address, please.
Good evening, Dr. Corey Franklin, 150 Bogey Lane, Salem. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Nicely. I am Dr. Corey Franklin, and I am the principal of Glenvar High School. And first, I would like to thank you all for your care and support of students and staff throughout this unprecedented pandemic. I appreciate that you have worked very hard to balance the safety concerns related to COVID-19 and the educational needs of our students. I also appreciate that you have made a focus of supporting the mental health of our students. This consideration of mental health was evident by your decision in January to support our return to play amongst the county high schools. You further demonstrated your support with your vote to permit regional play for our student athletes for winter sports. Through these decisions, Roanoke County student athletes have competed regionally in swim, basketball, wrestling, and indoor track. In fact, in case you didn't know, Glenvar High School girls basketball team has made it to the 2C region finals tomorrow night in Radford. You can watch it on the NFHS network. I understand tonight you will be determining whether Roanoke County schools will be permitted to play outside of our county for the fall season or must play only amongst ourselves. I am here to advocate on behalf of Glenvar Athletics for us to play within our Three Rivers district as we are currently doing with our regional play. There are several reasons to support our district play. We have had no outbreak spread of COVID-19 throughout the winter sports season and regional play. No teams have had to withdraw from competition due to COVID-19 outbreaks. Current CDC core indicators are actually better amongst the Three Rivers district schools than here in Roanoke County. The Three Rivers District has formulated a safety plan that mirrors the Roanoke County return to play protocols and the VHSL safety guidelines. With regards to regional play, the Virginia High School League schedule is designed for a 60% schedule of games in a typical season. This translates to only 6 football games. By playing only Roanoke County Public Schools, schools can only play 4 times. This has the potential to adversely impact our positions regionally. Fall sports is not going to be an all-in region playoff. Only the top 4 teams are going to advance to the regionals. If we stay county only, we would begin with a disadvantage by playing less games. If an RCPS team is quarantined due to COVID, their opponent will be further disadvantaged by dropping a game. And in order to be considered for regional competition, each district must grant approval for us to play outside the district, thus being able to advance to regional competition. Some members of the Three Rivers District have indicated to me and to my athletic director that they may not permit us to play a non-district schedule, thus eliminating our potential postseason before we even start. May I finish?
Yes.
Please permit our student athletes to compete in our Three Rivers District. As demonstrated during our regional play this past week, the safety protocols are good and they are working. We can make this work for our athletes. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
All right. Next speaker is Kevin Clifford. Good evening, Coach. Just state your name and your address, please.
Kevin Clifford, 7203 Willow Valley Road, Roanoke. First of all, I'd like to reiterate what Dr. Franklin said. Dr. Nicely, thank you for your support. Certainly the board, it took a lot of guts and courage to give us the opportunity to play. I'm sure it wasn't an easy one. I'd also like to thank Dr. Stegall. She has been extremely wonderful. Dr. Nicely giving her full autonomy to oversee the protocols, all the rules and regulations that not only the VHSL has forced us to follow. I was cold today. It was rainy and cold for 2 hours. But we really appreciate what you've done in your leadership role in giving us the guidelines. And I will say we have followed them to a T. We've had no outbreaks. We haven't had to quarantine anyone. And things have really gone smoothly. But the hardest thing for me in 31 years of doing this is not being able to compete at the highest level. And if we can't get into the regions, which I've talked to several coaches in our valley along the Roanoke region in reference to us not voting. I've talked to 3 or 4 coaches. They said, we're going to vote not to let you in. So that's extremely disturbing for me. I want our kids to compete at the highest level. And we've been fortunate to make it to the second round in the last 6 years. And it's emotional for me because we put a tremendous amount of time in. And I know the safety issue is a paramount thing for all of us. We want our kids to be safe. I'm at the forefront of that. We have a young man right here, who's one of the most outstanding kids we've ever had, who tore his meniscus, who's out for the year, has to have surgery. And it breaks our heart. But there's an inherent risk in everything we do. Furthermore, and more importantly, I'm a lot of things, and most of them probably aren't real good. However, I think I'm a man of my word. And if I give my word to someone, I'm going to follow through with that. And I feel like within the districts that we play in, the Three Rivers, the Blue Ridge, and the River Ridge, we're going to put those other schools. There's 17 or 18 schools that this affects. Furthermore, in the Blue Ridge and River Ridge, each one of those schools, if we don't play in those districts, they're going to have to find 2 games. That's very difficult to do. Furthermore, I think it's going to create more animosity, more divisiveness amongst our schools. And I think we owe it to the other schools as well as much as ours. If we're already playing regional play in these other sports, why wouldn't we be allowed to play outside of Roanoke County? We're going to anyway if they allow us. And again, that may not happen. And I don't think that's fair to our kids. And you all have done an exceptional job of making sure you put our kids first. And as a parent of 3 kids who graduated from Roanoke County schools, that 2 of them have graduated from college with honors. One is a 3rd year on the honor roll at UVA, and that's a direct result of the instruction he got here in Roanoke County. But more importantly to me, the things that he learned, the intrinsic values of being honest and forthright are the most important things. And I don't want anyone to say about us, and I'm talking about Roanoke County, I take great pride in being a teacher and a coach in this county, that we do things right. And I think the right thing to do is to follow what we said we would back in the fall and play our district schedules. Don't put those other teams in a predicament that causes more conflict down the road. We're going to play them in the fall anyway. So I certainly appreciate your consideration and your time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next speaker, Molly Camper.
Molly Camper, 2614 Woods Meadow Lane, Salem. As you all might remember, I'm a nurse practitioner at Roanoke Memorial Hospital. Last year, when the COVID pandemic hit the United States, fear tore through our country. However, healthcare workers showed up. Some were incentivized after months and months of suffering and the obvious need for more help in COVID-ridden cities. However, many healthcare workers continued to work, doing mandatory overtime, all while having their salaries cut in order to help keep the hospitals open for the communities they serve, because that is our job. No unions fought for us to stay home. Instead, healthcare workers showed up on day one, not knowing if the PPE would even protect them. Healthcare workers have volunteered to go into the COVID-ridden cities, leaving their families behind for months at a time. Some to this day have yet to see their families in almost a year. Last month, someone mentioned that it was disheartening that winter sports were approved. Well, I have been disheartened by the repeated attempts for virtual education to continue, despite the overwhelming evidence that transmission in schools are very low. Sure, the argument could be made that children could be carriers of the virus into schools, but according to statistics in our own community, that is not the case. You could also argue that transmission in schools are low due to the mitigation strategies, but what else have these strategies caused? Connect is a mental health coordination program at Carilion. In September of last year, I contacted them, and they stated they had already seen a substantial rise in child abuse cases, mental health therapy appointments, prescribed anxiety and depression medications for children and teens, and suicide attempts by hanging or overdose. They also informed me that there was not one bed in the entire state of Virginia for an inpatient psychiatric admission for a child or teen. Since then, I continue to read story after story of suicides, anxiety, depression, runaways, and missing children. I've talked to parents who recount the stories of their children's self-destructive behavior, such as isolation, cutting, and not being the kid they used to be. I've heard a teacher from a neighboring county say that she did not want to return to the classroom and become a statistic of COVID. But what about the children suffering from mental illness due to the effects of social distancing and virtual learning? Is it okay for them to be a statistic of COVID? I cannot say enough how grateful I am for the efforts of all teachers who have gone above and beyond during the pandemic. However, I have also had teachers tell me about their vacations, their children's travel sports teams, and tournaments out of state. I can't help but think how that behavior comes across to the parents who watch the daily decline of their children's mental health and grades. At this point in the pandemic, I can almost guarantee that we have all gone out to a restaurant or a store such as Lowe's, Walmart, or Kroger. These locations provide far less protection than a classroom does. It is time for in-person education, band, choir, theater, sports, etc. to resume 5 days a week. I appreciate the hard decisions that this school board is making on behalf of our kids and community. I also appreciate and respect the fear the teachers have of COVID, as I have seen face to face what COVID can do to the human body. I appreciate the hard work the teachers have put in to keep our children's education going this year, and I am not coming out to attack or offend anyone, truly. I'm simply here to advocate for the children who are getting left behind and are suffering devastating mental health conditions. We still have time to make this school year better. And all year we have heard about meeting after meeting how great our teachers and schools are doing compared to others. But I urge you to not only raise the bar, but set a new expectation and open the classrooms and sports and extracurricular activities for all students of all ages on all days at this time. Thank you.
All right. The next speaker is Rachel Worster.
Members of the board, I'm here once again to ask that you put the safety of students, staff, and the community first regarding decisions to allow students to play sports. Throughout all of the debate surrounding this issue, many of you have stated on numerous occasions that your goal was to allow for students to have at least some opportunity to play sports. You have given students those opportunities by deviating from CDC and VDH guidelines against the advice of local health officials. Now you are considering further rolling back protections by allowing inter-district play in the regular season. This puts students, staff, and the community at additional risk as it increases the amount of contact among students. Every team and district added increases the risk of an outbreak. Almost every district in the state is in the highest risk category for school transmission. Now is not the time to allow our students to travel and compete in other districts. Allowing inter-district sports also opens the door for a host of new problems, as contact tracing and reporting will need to be coordinated across multiple school divisions rather than just among our own students and staff. We would be relying on not just our own district to follow protocols and guidelines, but also on entire other districts that may have different rules and expectations than those we are following. We would then be relying on each district to notify us if any issues were to arise. When it comes to COVID, one day can make all the difference. You have already given students an opportunity to play. Are you considering taking on these extra risks for the good of our students and community, or for the sake of winning? Please stand by your original decision to keep play only in Roanoke County. Thank you for your time.
Okay, moving on to agenda number 7, report by Student Advisory Council. Mark Linkus. Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Nicely. My name is Mark Linkus. I am a senior at Glenver High School. The Student Advisory Council last met on February 3rd over a WebEx call where the council was able to have a discussion with Ms. Hans and Mr. Corner concerning addiction and the pandemic. Being community partners with organizations that routinely look at data inside the schools and in the community regarding addiction, Ms. Hans and Mr. Corner were able to communicate how many people, including students, have coped with this pandemic using substances. Furthermore, they discussed how many tobacco companies see students as a way to make money during this time of less connections. The time was concluded with discussion about the importance of raising awareness about the dangers of using harmful substances, as well as the importance of creating more opportunities for students to get connected with teachers and instructors in the school and in the community. Lastly, members of the council were actually given a time to share some of the positive news about events going on inside of the county schools. So members reported on excitement behind spring sports starting up and regional play being allowed for winter sports. Many schools are conducting canned food drives at this time for senior citizens in our community. And lastly, a large number are participating in school spirit weeks all around. Yeah, so thank you so much for your continuous support of the Student Advisory Council.
Thank you. All right. Agenda item 8.1, approval of personnel changes, approval of school board meeting minutes, and financial reports are all part of the consent agenda this evening. I have a motion to approve.
Chairman, I move that item number 8, 01, 02, and 03 be approved.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk, the roll.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. All right, moving on to action items. 9.01, consideration of allowing middle school and or high school fall sports teams to play a district or league schedule. Dr. Segal is going to give us a little overview. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Nicely, last Tuesday, February 2nd, at the school board work session, I presented information related to the consideration of allowing middle and high school fall sports teams to play a district or an in-county schedule. This is an action item on this evening's agenda for your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any discussion?
Probably a lot of discussion, but I guess the one concerning piece, just so you know, I know how I'm voting, but the one concerning piece is that, as I understood it from the work session and from prior meetings, is that the other schools could vote that we not be allowed to play in region.
That's correct.
Or state. So if they're only taking so many positions anyway, how would that work?
So the way that would work is each district has to allow us to play a non-district schedule. So the districts would have to approve that. If they do not approve that, then that means if we're not playing an approved schedule, we cannot advance to region play. So that falls on, the districts are made up and managed by the principals of those schools and those districts, and they are the ones who vote, and it's majority vote rules. The situation with the winter sports, the difference there is we did play in county and so did other school divisions, but there were also school divisions that paused their play and started very late in the season. So their kids only had like 2 weeks of activity. So at that point, there were so many anomalies that the regions really didn't have a choice but to do the all-in. So that's the reason they granted that so easily. This time, though, we are the only school division not playing district at this time.
So it just seems, again, I'm going to say this, it's awful hypocritical for that to happen in a time of a pandemic, for others to say that if it goes that way, that we're excluded because we're taking measures to protect during a pandemic. So it's the principals only. It's not a superintendent, not the other school boards or what have you.
It is the principal because the way the VHS is set up as a governing body, each district, the principals serve as the governing body, and then at the region level, the principals serve as that governing body. So that's the way the organization is set up.
Yes, Mr. Ray?
Dr. Skull, what is what happens if you go to a school and you don't feel comfortable? Do they talk prior to the other school to see what guidelines they're following? And if you don't feel comfortable, do we just not go?
Mm-hmm. So what would happen is prior to the game, the school division that's hosting would send what their protocols would be. And then at that time, before we even travel, we'd make a decision if we were going to go there and play. I've looked over the protocols from all three of the districts, and they match up pretty well. The only differences you're going to see is some of the school divisions require masks at all times. So if we go there to play volleyball, we would be expected to wear a mask at all time, and we would do that if we went and that was their request. Another one would be some do not allow any visitors to come to any of the events, so we would not allow our visiting guests to go to that game. So those are really the only changes. Everything else is kind of matched up because it's VHSL guidance. So most all the other protocols are the same.
Yeah, and I think if I'm correct, Salem requires masks for basketball. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Montgomery County did as well.
Montgomery County.
Roanoke City, I think, did as well.
Mr. Chairman, one more.
Yes.
So, as I understand it in the Blue Ridge, we would play in 6 different counties, right? So if a county gets quarantined, then you'd have to pick up another game to be able to be eligible for doesn't it require 6 to?
Well, they start out saying they require the 6, but we'll have to wait and see how many people qualify for meeting that 6. That's what determines whether you advance to region. But I also noticed today what the VHSL put out is a list of all the school divisions that are playing. And so their idea is for school divisions who are struggling to find games, in case that happens, they're going to have a running list of available teams that are available for play. Of course, that potentially could mean more travel.
And so in the Blue Ridge, we also have to pick up a game from outside so I understand we have the ability to get one from Spotswood, which is a couple hours away. But if one of these counties get quarantined, and so we really don't have the ability, may not have the ability, maybe the powers that be would grant us that, ability to go on to regionals. I'm talking about Northside and Byrd.
Possibly. I could see that helping us out if, and I don't mean this sounds bad to say that, but if more teams are quarantined and aren't able to move forward with play and they're not able to get their 60% of the schedule, then the region's going to have to make a decision between allowing us to play, allowing them to play, and that's going to be a hard decision, not to allow all those circumstances to play. However, there's no guarantee that's going to happen.
So there's no guarantee either way.
There's no guarantee.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to allow middle and high school fall sports to play a county schedule.
Any discussion?
I'll second.
All right. The roll. Madam Clerk, the roll.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
No. I'd like to make a follow-up motion. But before I do, I want to talk a little bit about what I heard this evening. As a matter of fact, I'll make the motion first, and then as we have discussion on the motion is when I'll make my pitch. I'd like to move that the Glenver High School and middle schools be exempt from the decision made to only allow competition within Roanoke County, and that Glenver be allowed to play schools in the Three Rivers District. Do I have a second? The motion is dead. Sorry. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, could I know this is a complicated issue, but one other action related to this that, and you can discuss this and say no one way or the other, but would the board consider, currently the board's previous action was above and beyond the VHSL playing rules in terms of not allowing spectators. Would the board want to consider for fall sports, allowing the schools, even though you've taken action to play in county, to let them play by VHSL rules regarding that? It's something for the board to consider.
Mr. Chairman. So, and that would allow more spectators in? Because
currently the board's current ruling, previous action was to not allow spectators for regular season play. So if that's your desire to continue with that, so be it. But if the board is, interested in just following the VHSL guidelines and allowing the allowed number of spectators, and Dr. Seagal can explain how many that would be something that the board would probably want to go ahead and take action on if that's your desire.
I would like to see that, if we're just discussing, I'm assuming, Mr. Chairman, is that okay? Just to discuss. So, yes, I would like to see, one of the things, and if we can discuss, is that cheerleading, and I don't know how you get, these are awful tough decisions. This is not, I would like to open everything up. You know where I voted the whole time, and you know what I'd like to do. I'd like to say, Katie, bar the door, and everybody, go back to normal. But my number one focus is getting kids back in school. So let me just say that with the vote we just took. But, we can't, in my mind, we can't exclude cheerleading. I wish we couldn't, and I hope we can exclude band. Maybe that'll change with some of the governor's, announcements in coming days. But my thought with allowing and doing it safe and social distancing, with allowing the change to the VHSL rules for attendance, is that at least each player can bring two. I don't guess it has to be family members, does it? Which would allow us, if there are some folks, I know even in football you have JV that sometimes come up just in case of injuries, and maybe they don't have parents there. I don't know, if they want to come, obviously they could. But that allows us room for cheerleaders, because I don't know how we exclude cheerleaders. To me, that's, just ridiculous. It's a sport. It's a part of everything we do in every sport. And so I'd like to suggest that we do follow the HSL rules for our home games.
Would that be your recommendation, Dr. Nicely?
So 25 people, correct?
Indoor.
Indoor. And as I understand it, cheerleaders count towards that 25, correct?
They do.
Okay, I mean, I think that's important. So, I mean, worst case scenario, we might end up being able to have one player, could invite, whoever
Well,
they,
for volleyball, we don't have cheer, so the volleyball could be the 25 parents.
unless, so we also need to consider if, for instance, after the JV game is over, if the JV decides to, if it's insistent that the JV players stay and watch the game, that's less people in the stands, correct? Okay.
And what a lot of school, we do have the option of, we could say, the 25 visitors come to the home team, no traveling. The reason I would suggest that is we are currently a week away from having all of our streaming cameras up. Northside's playing right now, and it's streaming. And we also have all of our stadiums in 2 weeks will be up and streaming. So we could easily say something where all of our tickets would go to the home school, and they could bring the band, could bring the cheer, could do all of that. The visitors would not attend, not even the parents. If we did that, each school could accommodate everything that they wanted to, still stay under the number, and then the away parents would stream. That would be one option to accommodate it all.
Yeah, I just hate to put our administrators at the school in the position of being like the mask police and, because I've heard there's been a few instances and I just hate to, have them in that situation. But, so thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Ray?
Chairman, are there any provisions like for a senior night or senior game, or how are we handling maybe the possibility of that? Because you're limited on your numbers?
Yeah, we would certainly have to work that in. That's a given that we would definitely do that for our seniors. So, there's several different ways we could look at that. We could allow the tickets of the away group to come and bring their parents, and then we have let's say you have 3 home games. One of those games would be parent only, and you would plan for that to be your senior night. The other 2 games you could plan for your band and your cheer to be there, and parents would have to stream. But it's just wherever you place it, you get one group of numbers. So you just have to figure out what's your priority for that game. And I do think we need some consistency across the division. So I think that's something that we need to get our principals and ADs together and get on the same page, because we certainly don't want one school not allowing visitors and then another school allowing. We need to be consistent.
Agreed.
And on the spring sports, you're more the outdoor. Is there any thoughts, or have you heard anything about provisions that may be different for attendance when we get to that level?
No, haven't heard a word about that. But even this time, they actually thought that the governor was going to loosen standards at the end of January, and that did not happen. But they were anticipating that.
All right.
Thank you.
Are we at a point where we want to make a decision, or is this something we need to talk about at the next work session?
I don't need to, but it's up to you. I'm happy to do whatever the board wishes.
We can start play January
it on.
22nd, February 22nd. That's when we can start games.
But our
Okay.
first game
We
is
probably need to make
26, right?
All right. Someone
Yeah,
wanna make a motion?
football's the 22nd.
Okay, so that's right. That's
Yeah.
right, okay. So, yeah, so I'll make a motion, correct me if I don't do this exactly, but that we follow VHSL rules for, this would be fall sports, and allow the number of visitors per child or per student.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Madam Clerk, the roll.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. All right. Action item number 10, COVID update. Dr. Stegall?
Yes. So the CDC school metric numbers are actually trending down. They have not been trending down for quite a while now, so that's at least a good little glimmer of hope. And we're also at the lowest positivity test rate since early November. We are at 9.8. We finally came out of the red and they're in the orange, which is hopeful, right? So we're definitely heading in the right direction. Not quite there yet, but we're getting there. When I want to take a look at the school data here, I think it's interesting to see, we're looking at the month of October, November, and January. We're skipping December just because that was a short month. But I wanted to look at each of these numbers as we go through the month. So let's look at October. When you look at the number of positive students, it's 1%, right at 0.9% of positive students in October. In November, it was 1.2. And in January, it's 1.3. When you look at positive staff, we were at 2%. Positive staff in November, 2%. Positive staff in January, 2.3. And when you look at number of students exposed, I think this is the more important information here, is that we can't necessarily control the number of positive students and staff that come into our schools. But what we can help to control through our mitigation strategies are the exposures that take place in our buildings. So if you look at the month of October, student exposures were at 0.4%. Staff exposures were at 0.7%. If you look at November, student exposures were at 0.3%. Staff exposures at 0.7%. If you look at January, student exposures at 0.4% and staff exposures at 0.7%. So what I think I take from this data is the mitigation strategies are working. They're consistent. You're not seeing big influxes in the data. It stayed fairly consistent. But I do think that you're going to start to see, when I come back and present this at the end of February, I think February is going to show you a very different picture. We can already see that our numbers are coming down. When you look at the quarantine data, in January, January 1st, we had 442 students and staff members who were quarantined. And in February, the 1st of February, we had 314. And it's been trending and averaging around that number. If you look at the number of staff quarantines, in January, we had 82 teachers. It averaged between 75 to 80. And now we're at 42 at the 1st of February. So clearly the numbers are trending down. Everything's coming down to where it needs to be. We still have a ways to go, but it's hopeful, right? The information is hopeful that we're heading the right way. Staff vaccinations, just a big thank you to the Health Department and Carilion for teaming together to offer vaccinations to our educators in the Valley. And on January 22nd, our school staff was able to get their first dose, and then tomorrow there's an event at the Berglund Center for their second dose. So we're really excited to have that underway. I wanted to share some survey results. We have been running a weekly survey on vaccinations to get real data on our employees and making sure everybody's able to get their appointments. So if you look at that survey data, 407 staff members, these are current staff members. I've taken the substitutes and retirees out of this number, but 407 responded that they did not want to receive the vaccine. 1,578 said that they did want to receive the vaccine. To date, 1,247 have received the first dose, and that 79% of all staff members who wanted the vaccine have already received the first dose vaccine. So I think it's a very high number. I think the process is certainly working. We also asked if they were having trouble getting appointments, because that's something that we needed to know, and only 4 staff members were unable to get their first dose appointments. When we looked a little bit deeper into that number, we realized that it was one department that carried about half of this number, and they were just really struggling to get onto the computer to get into the system. We have sent someone over there, and they've got them all in the computer and registered. So that number will certainly come down. And some have simply delayed getting their COVID shot, getting their shot because they've had COVID recently, so they're delaying getting that appointment. So that 40 number incorporates those people as well. So I think our numbers are looking really good. I feel like the vaccination process is working. I don't feel like there's any kinks in the system. And after Friday, we do another survey. We've done one this week, but I think next week we'll start to see the second dose people, that the numbers will start to pop up.
Can we hire my 90-year-old mother as a substitute for a week so we can get her a shot?
I know, right?
Okay.
That's right.
How old? 90.
Wow, that's amazing.
Still
Hey,
has
I
a
still
guy-
have a mother at this age. Is that amazing?
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Mr. Chairman, is it safe to say that the students are safer in school for COVID than they are at home?
Well, it depends on who's in their home, but yeah, certainly I think we.
I mean, that's less than 1%
Yeah.
exposed, right?
Mhm.
I mean, less than
Yes.
0.5% for students, less than 1% for teachers or for staff.
And I will say, in that number, we have to remember that a lot of those exposures have taken place because they are preschool or kindergarten classes where it's challenged to manage those children and to maintain the distancing. So the majority of those exposures have happened in those classrooms. They've also happened in some of our special needs classrooms and where there's one-on-one situations. So if we were to take that number out of,
Wow.
it would be much lower.
So it's safe.
It is.
We are safe at school.
We are.
I just wish we could get that message across.
And Dr. Morrow has supported that as well. I mean, she has said herself that we are not contributing to the spread of COVID.
Well, then,
So,
Because of our mitigation strategies.
that's right. That's right.
then that's where the kids ought to be, right? They ought to be in school.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, may I
Yes.
ask? I had read today that the new recommendation from the CDC is that once people get their 14 days removed from the second vaccine, if they were to be exposed with someone with COVID, they would no longer have to quarantine. Is that correct?
It is.
So
And
that should help our staffing
should.
numbers significantly once the majority of our staff has their second vaccine, correct?
however, it does go on to say that that's for 3 months. And then-
No,
yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
because
You
no
gotta
one
get-
really knows how long the vaccine.
Yeah, it'll
But that
get us
gets
through the
end
school
of
year.
So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
No, I
but
mean, I
you're
think
right.
that's, I mean, that's definitely moving in the right direction.
It is, and I will say that when CDC makes a change, it has to go through our health department. Once the health department makes an official adjustment to their protocols, we adjust ours. So, we've already had a couple people start calling and say, can I return, that kind of thing. But we are going to wait for the health department to give us the green light.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up on the agenda is 10:02 instructional updates. Dr. Hogan and Mike Riley.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, and Dr. Nicely. Mr. Riley and I are here to share information with you about the second 9 weeks grade distribution information. With that, we have for our elementary schools currently, for the 2020-21 school year, for in-person, for our hybrid students, for elementary, 76% were A's, 16% were B's, 6% were D's, 6% C's, 2% D's, and 1% F. For our 100% online grades, 72% were A's, 15% were B's, 7% were C's, 3% D's, and 3% F's. For the 2019-2020, all grades that were taken last year for the elementary level, 60% A's, 28% B's, 10% C's, 2% D's, and less than 1% F's. So with that, our A's and B's and C's have held steady. We do know for our 100% online grades that we do have 2 percentage points higher than what that was last year. We have noticed that with our A's and B's that we've had slightly an increase with those numbers. What I attribute that to is we have really taken the stance at the elementary level to grant grace to our students. And what I mean by that is that we accept all work, whether it's late or not, to give the child full credit because we recognize that we're living during challenging times. We also, with those youngsters, as students have not experienced success or maybe had a lower grade, we've given them other opportunities to be able to be reassessed because what our goal and ultimate goal always is with our students is to see if they represent mastery. So that's where we stand for the second 9 weeks for elementary.
All right, next up is middle school, and you've got those grades there. Again, if you look, the A's down slightly in both the hybrid and online. B's the same, C's are very consistent. Of course, like we saw first 9 weeks, our D's are actually our F's. There's definitely an increase there in the number of F's that we have in our middle grades. Of course, the hybrid kids are still doing statistically better than the 100% online kids. But those numbers, if you go back and look at the first 9 weeks, are fairly similar. Of course, you do see this at the secondary level oftentimes, and you may have experienced this as parents. Sometimes first 9 weeks, kids are excited to get back to school. Things are going well. You tend to see a little bit of a dip in that second 9 weeks, and sometimes even in the third 9 weeks. And then you'll see sometimes often a bounce back that fourth 9 weeks. So sometimes you would anticipate a little bit of a dip, but certainly not that much. And of course, we've put some new strategies in place to help those kids here. We'll talk about that in just a second.
Mr. Riley?
Yes, sir.
Do you think those are the more at-risk kids?
Which ones are you talking about specifically?
The Fs. I mean, are they the, for school in general?
I think it depends on the student and their connection to what we've been doing. In some cases, yeah, it would be some of your at-risk students. I made a point as I was out in the buildings this last week to talk specifically to principals at the secondary level. What are they seeing? What are they struggling with? In some cases, it's that at-risk student, but oftentimes there are some of those as we've gotten them back into the building and plugged in with teachers and things, they seem to be doing better. For the most part, with a few exceptions, what they're struggling with are kids that aren't engaging in the things the teachers are offering, whether it's the hybrid students and they're not coming in and WebExing in on the days they're not there, or the 100% online students that aren't taking advantage. Now, there are some exceptions to that. There are certainly some students who are plugging in and trying and failing, and we have that every year, even when we're in school 5 days a week with those kids.
Okay.
But I do think you'll see that to a certain extent, again, especially with your 100% online kids. There needs to be a lot of, especially at the lower middle grades and certainly at the elementary level, there's going to be a lot of parent support there to make sure they're helping kids get online. We talked last time a lot about students, especially your middle schoolers, struggling with that executive functioning, the getting started on tasks, finishing tasks, not putting things off to the last minute, not realizing how long it's going to take to complete work. And I think you're seeing some of that. Now, that being said, our secondary teachers have done a great job, just like the elementary folks, of extending grace to those students. I know at the middle level, they're still accepting work from the second 9 weeks. So hopefully, at the middle grades, those grades are going to be changing. You're going to have some of those Fs going away as we continue to accept work, because we want kids to be able to demonstrate what they know. And I know that some of the high school teachers are still accepting work from the second 9 weeks. Now, some aren't, because they've had to move on. And of course, our academy classes, we'll talk about those in just a second. At the high school level, they've finished those classes, because most of those are semesterized, with the exception of the 4 languages and some of the dual enrollment classes. But the academy classes have finished up, and again, they had to move on.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. The hybrid grades, the Ds and Fs, where were those in the first quarter? And did we see, is that a little bit of a bounce back from the Wednesday help days that we
I
had?
have to go back and look specifically. I think they're fairly similar, but yes, we have seen some improvement from the help days. I think in talking to the principals, they feel very confident that as they bring back, because a lot of those Fs there are kids that we have targeted to bring back 4 days a week, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. That's one of the strategies that we're employing that we think is really going to help us as we get into that third 9 weeks. But yeah, kids who have participated in the Wednesday help days, it definitely has helped to them. Still struggling getting everybody in that needs to be there, and you still have students that are 100% online who, even though they have the option to come in, and we've invited them in on Wednesdays, who don't take advantage.
So they have been, that was going to be my next question. The online students do have the option of coming in on Wednesday?
Yes, sir. They've been invited, and some will, and of course, some won't, and we talked about this last time too. You have several who truly have. There are some very serious health conditions at home that those kids need to stay at home. And again, that's where we're asking teachers to utilize the technology we've provided to reach out through WebEx and things like that. And that's available too. But certainly, we have extended those Wednesday help days to our 100% online students as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you're looking at the Fs and you talk online, 100% online, is there a consistency of turning in work late and then maybe they catch it up at the end, or what is is there a percentage, or do you see a trend in that respect?
I think, first of all, I think one thing, and again, I know our eyes all go to that F column. And again, I'll go to the high school because we're talking secondary.
Yes,
we
they
can
do.
see those numbers there, and again, they're high.
They do.
You go there, I want to make sure everybody understands that we do have a large percentage of our 100% online kids who are being successful, and they are making this work. In talking with the principals as they talk to their teachers, the biggest issue they're having with a majority of kids, and again, anytime you say a majority, there are some kids who are really putting the time in, who are connected to everything and still struggling, but a majority of those Fs, as you talk to the secondary principals, are kids who are not connecting with anything. They're not showing up to the WebExes. They're not turning in work. In some cases, they're calling home. They can't get in touch with anybody.
And my fear is that those are the disadvantaged, the ones that don't have the network at home, that are maybe our poor students or disadvantaged. And it's sad. We need to get them back in school.
Well, and we have, and of course, every 9 weeks, we've invited them to come back here this last time before we rolled back, and we'll show you just in a second what we've been able to do with this new rollout, the expansion of our plan here in the third 9 weeks. But before we roll into each expansion, we've given folks who are 100% online the opportunity to come back because we want them to be able to do that. Of course, with this new expansion, you're going to see some pretty large numbers here that we're able to bring back 4 days a week, which I think is going to be significant. To be able to plan for that at the building level, they had to know how many kids were going to be coming back from the 100% online, so they knew how many students they could put in a classroom and still maintain the 6 feet.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll let Ms. Hogan talk a little bit about the conclusions, and then we'll share some of the strategies and some of the action plans that we're putting in place moving forward into the third 9 weeks.
After we looked at the analysis of the data, there were some preliminary conclusions that we could draw from this information. Not surprisingly, many of the students struggle, or more those who are 100% online. We know that parents have chosen 100% online for different reasons, as Mr. Riley has shared. The biggest challenge with some students is that they're not taking advantage of some of the things that have been offered to them, like he had shared earlier. Teachers and principals are working hard to reach the students. I know at the elementary level, and I know that they're doing this at secondary as well, when a child is failing, they're reaching out personally to the
Could you
parents.
step closer to the mic?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. We know that the principals as well as teachers are personally reaching out to the parents to discuss with them, with their child, what they're currently struggling with and how they can develop plans to address that. And then, of course, we know that avoid having all students 100% online has paid off with that, is by bringing in as many students as we possibly could. For intervention and support model, we do use a tiered approach. With Tier 1, this is when all students need class-wide and school-wide support. We know that 15% of our students may need some small group support that we do offer for our students in the buildings, and then 5% of our students may need individual support. So we've got some action steps now that we're moving into the third 9 weeks that we're looking at. I'm excited to say that we've had our fourth grade students return to in-person for 5 days a week. Our students who have IEPs are L students, and students who are currently failing a course were invited to attend 4 days a week, and we've had quite a few students take advantage of that. We've had 208 fifth graders that are now attending 4 days a week based on those qualifications. 864 secondary students are now attending 4 days a week. We're continuing with Wednesday help days at the secondary level, and we continue to meet with individual principals to discuss individual students and next tier interventions. And then we have 34 secondary students that are now participating in Edgenuity.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Hogan and Mr. Riley. So, and this is another piece of information I think is wonderful that we're getting out. So we're adding fifth graders 4 days a week, and I have to go back to the chart, but maybe even more for middle school and high school. And maybe you're getting to this. Those ones that are struggling, is there a way for us to go back? My fear is the poor population, the ones that don't have the support at home. Is there another way for us to reach out again to these students that aren't performing well and ask, look, you have the ability to come in 4 days a week, or with whatever the case is from the middle and the high school. I just think I think we all know this is just crushing some of them, and I'm not sure they have the support at home, maybe, and I'm taking a stab that a large portion of them don't. But to me, to reach back out to them, whatever we have to do to get them, and if we can get them in the class, in school, if we can change them from online to in person, whatever that is, I don't know who we need to talk to, but to reach those kids.
That's something that we're doing, or that we have been doing with principals. We've been having those conversations with them for those identified students that are currently not passing a course or fall under those special categories. They are reaching out to the parents to invite those children back. We welcome them back. And so definitely we will circle back around with our principals to remind them to make that continued contact with them, to encourage them to please return.
Thank you.
Slide in here. I got to get in front of the microphone. I've been told we can't be heard online if we're not standing right here. No, that's okay. I'm usually more than loud enough without a microphone, but it doesn't work when you live stream and stuff. We have contacted parents of every student who was in one of those categories to let them know we wanted them back, even if they're 100% online. We reached out to them and said, we would like to have you back. We've got a spot for you to come back 4 days a week because your child's struggling. Now, again, you can offer it. At some point in time, the parents have got to allow their child to come back. But I do know at the middle and high school, we have reached out to each one of those families and invited those students back. And in a lot of cases, you can see and quite honestly, that number is probably getting closer to 1,000 because we're continuing to invite kids back in, and the ones that are struggling are taking advantage of that. I think we're going to just continue to do that. We've asked our principals, again, to maximize the staff they have and the space they have to get as many of those kids back as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
And then finally, just the last thing I do want to share, and this is just a part of our strategies. Of course, we know as you look at those numbers of failing students at the end of the year, we're going to have some kids who are going to need some additional help and remediation. So usually it's this time we present the summer plan to the board. So I'm just going to do that real quickly. And this will probably move to an action item in the consent agenda. But we're looking to hopefully reestablish our face-to-face summer school this summer, even if it's 6 feet with masks. I think we can do that. So we're going to be inviting students who need extra help, who have failed high school classes, to come to Northside High School this summer starting in June. You can see the schedule there. I won't go through the whole thing, but it would be just exactly what we've done for the past several years, except for this past summer. If you remember, we went 100% online this past summer. We feel like we need to get back to bringing kids in, so that's the plan this summer. The only thing we wouldn't offer face-to-face in summer school that we have in the past would be our health and PE classes. Those are usually very large. We bring those kids in. A big selling point of those are the field trips that they often take in the summer, which we wouldn't be able to do. So we're probably going to do the health and PE piece online, but those aren't our failures. What we're looking to do is make sure the kids who are failing at the high school level have an opportunity to come in and take classes at Northside the way we have in the past. And again, even if we feel confident we can do it, even if it's, with 6 feet distancing and masks, we're going to get the kids in to do that.
Maybe this is for Dr. Nicely as well as, we're hearing that the governor may institute some sort of a summer session. Have you heard? And so I guess if that happens, that would supersede whatever this is.
Well, what it is, he's encouraging school systems across the Commonwealth to definitely, amp up your summer programs, which is, what we're doing here. And, for school divisions who need some extra funding to make that happen, they're trying to make that available. So he's definitely encouraging that. And we're, definitely on that track too, to take our normal summer programs, but also amp them up as they're describing.
Well, okay, is that what, is this an amped up program? Is that what you're saying?
Well, at the high school level, what we'll do is, of course, kids will have to repeat classes they failed. They'll have the opportunity to do that in the summer. And of course, high school is a little different than middle school. I'll talk about the middle school plan here in just a second. At the high school level, if you fail 2 classes, you could retake 1 in summer school, and you could take 1 the following year along with all your new classes. So again, at the high school level, it's a class-by-class basis. So we're going to offer the opportunity for them to make up to 2 classes that they failed in the summer program. To go beyond that's really difficult. You don't necessarily have enough time to cover more than 2 classes. But they'll have the opportunity to do the 2 classes they normally would, and then, of course, the following year, they could make up additional classes if they needed to. Now, one of the things we've done for our seniors, I'll go back to this slide here. The Edgenuity program is what we use in the A-STEP program, if you're familiar with that. We've got several seniors who it was very obvious they weren't going to be successful in the program we're doing. Edgenuity is the program we use in the summer program. We've got some kids that have started that right now to make sure that they're continuing on track to graduation, even if they need to continue into the summer. So that's what we'll be doing at the high school level. The middle school level, we are looking to amp up. Last summer, we did a 3-week skills-based, it was really kind of a project-based, skill-centered program for those kids. It was very successful. Teachers, principals, kids reported that things went very well. This summer, we know we're probably going to need more than that. So in speaking with the middle school principals, what we'd like to do and what we're suggesting is we actually double that and have 2 sessions. So that actually would be an extension of what we've done in the past, where we'd have 3 weeks in June where we would have students come in. And again, if you remember last year, we moved away from kind of the computer-based at Northside High School model for our middle schoolers. So those kids will be at their base schools with teachers. They'll be working on the skills that we've identified that they're really going to need to move to that next grade level. That will be happening in June, and then we're proposing a second 3-week session in July that replicates what we did last summer with some of the project-based things that they were able to do that we found very successful with the students. So we are looking at the middle level to basically double the amount of space and time that we had last summer for those students to prepare them for either moving on to the high school or for the next grade level.
Doubling it is fantastic, but when we look at these numbers, and there are 7 times as many in middle school failing and 9 or 10 times as many in high school failing, doubling it is not going to cover that. Do we need to expand this to more than just one location?
The time frame would be doubled, but you could have more kids in it, if that makes sense. In other words, we've got at the high school, we have the 2 sessions, but if we have more students that we need to put in there, which is really what you're looking at, then it would just be incumbent for us to be able to find the staff to make that work. In other words, in the past, you might have a room at Northside High School, if we're talking high school, where you'd have the science students that were retaking a science class. Well, if we have double the numbers who need that, then it might be 2 rooms. It'd be the same period of time. You would just need to make sure you have the staff to cover that, which is one of the reasons why, if you remember back in the budget discussions we had at the work session, we would like to increase the pay for this summer to hopefully entice more teachers to help us out. Same thing at the middle level. Even though there's only 2 sessions, if we have the staff, you could have there isn't necessarily a limit to the number of students who could participate if you have the staff to do it, because we've got the facilities to do it because we're using our buildings.
Mr. Ray? Thank you. And that's basically what I was going to ask about with staff, and if you have that. So everything is in person, correct?
Yes, sir.
There won't be any online, there won't
Yes,
be
sir.
any, and
with the exception, the only thing that will be online this summer would be our academy classes. We have students who take new classes all the time, and that's something we've always done. And like I said before, the health and PE is often face-to-face at Northside. We don't feel like that's just appropriate with the number of students that would involve. But again, those are new classes that students are taking. These aren't students who are failing, trying to recover credits.
Do you have teachers already signed up for summer?
the high school level, we don't. We usually wait until we get the dates set and approved by the board, then we'll advertise for those positions. At the middle school, because we're looking to basically double the amount of time, I've asked the principals to start to see if they have teachers that are interested. They have all indicated that they feel like they have the staff to make this work right now. Again, dependent upon how many students sign up.
But you'll know in plenty of time what staff needs will be in case we have any shortage to come back to us.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you, if it sounds like there might be an opportunity to get funding, if we need it, for the summer program?
Possibly. We can already use some of the grant funding that we have for these kinds of programs because we can say, part of it is COVID related. They kind of alluded to some possibility of applying for some additional state fundings. We don't have a lot of information about that yet, but it is a possibility. But we can, I feel pretty confident, actually use some other funding resources, including the CARES. They have that listed there.
Right.
Because of the extra need.
In the middle school program, because of the nature of it, there is some state reimbursement money that comes along with that as well. Because it's not a credit, you're not taking a class for credit. It's truly, we're remediating skills. So there's a fund that will be reimbursed for some of the costs through the state for that program.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So one quick question, maybe for Dr. Nicely and all. Should we consider adding fifth grade to this?
We have individual summer schools at each of the buildings. And so with that, they can, if for students that have been identified as needing additional support, they can provide that support in the summer at their home school. And those programs usually run anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks. And they use not only SOL data, but formative data that we have, as well as reading and math data that the teachers have to identify those students that need additional support. And they do offer those programs at each of the schools.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because that's one grade that has kind of been.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay. One quick question about transportation. It's up to the parents.
Right now, that is the case, yes. That is some of the things we have been talking a little bit about is what would it look like if there is the funding to provide some transportation, but we have not, at this point, being February, haven't gotten to the point where we've started to actually look at details of what that would be.
My view, and I think I'm going to get some head nods here, is that we ought to find a way to provide, if we really want to get to the kids who don't have the support at home and don't have a way to, we ought to find a way. And if there's any way that we can put a funding package together that puts transportation, staff, and all this to remediate, I mean, we've got some great data to show that we really do need to do some work in the summertime, and it sounds like the governor is thinking about it, but we just need to stay close to it and strike while the iron's hot.
Great point.
Right. Okay, anything else? All right, let's see, the next item on, and thank you, Susan Peterson.
Yeah, thank you.
Appropriation request for increase in county transfer of $1,681,342. How many cents? 42 cents.
Good evening,
Never mind.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you recall, when we originally adopted our budget in March, we were expecting an increase from the county transfer of just over $2 million. However, shortly after that happened, the pandemic came upon us, and the county and ourselves had to sharpen our pencils, and we both reduced our revenues, and the county went back and reduced our revenues by almost $2.5 million from the prior year budget. At that time, the Board of Supervisors did agree that they would look at the revenues mid-year, and if they were trending higher than budget, they would consider an appropriation of revenues at that time, and they would transfer the amount that was shared to the schools. So on January 26th of this year, during the work session, County shared with the Board of Supervisors an analysis of their anticipated surplus of revenues, and they think that they're going to have $4.1 million of excess revenue above what they budgeted. Of this amount, $4,021,090 is subject to the revenue sharing formula. When multiplied against the 41.8131%, the revenue sharing formula that was used to calculate the transfer for the current year, this results in $1,681,342. That would be an additional amount of money transferred to the schools. On Tuesday, the County Board of Supervisors approved the first reading of the ordinance for this transfer. They will approve the second reading on the 25th, or the 23rd. So staff is bringing to you a request to appropriate this funds in the manner as shown in board docs. And to summarize what these items are, the first several relate to what Dr. Stegall has brought to you originally regarding our athletes' athletic funds. You know, since the schools have not had ticket sales from football and basketball games, these are funds that the income that they typically use to pay for the sports game officials, the game workers, police, transportation. And so in order to hold their games, they don't have the income to pay for this. So we are recommending paying to the high schools $228,720 to cover their winter, fall, and spring sports. We are recommending paying $67,500 to the middle schools to pay for their fall and spring sports. In addition, we recommend $13,606 to be appropriated to CTE for equipment. And then the last two items, $1.2 million to be transferred to the Technology Replacement Fund, and the remaining $171,516 to be transferred to the Fleet Replacement Fund would kind of be a pre-funding of the transfer that was built into the 2021-2022 replacement plans. What this will do is free up almost $1.3 million from next year's budget planning process and allow us a little more flexibility next year. Unfortunately, what it will also do is not put that amount of money in the original budget, and we will have to address that in the 2022-2023 year. So it gives us flexibility in 1 year, but it does make us address that the year after. So if that is, I can answer any questions that you have at this time.
Any questions?
Thank you.
No?
Just a comment, you went over this with us in our work session, and
Right.
certainly we hashed it out pretty thoroughly, so thank you for your work that you do.
So this will come to us as an action item at the next board meeting, or?
Well, I put it under information, so it would roll to consent unless you wanted me to bring it as action.
No, we can do it as part of the next consent agenda. Yeah. Is that
So-
okay?
And then that is after the second reading of their ordinance, and so
Right.
then we're good to go. It's perfect
Right.
timing.
If everything goes smooth in the second.
Yes.
Yeah.
We shall see. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Report by Superintendent, Dr. Nicely.
Just a couple brief comments, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. As Dr. Stegall alluded to earlier, we're excited to have our second mass vaccination event tomorrow for our educators and staff. Again, want to thank our health department in Carillion for making that happen. We are concerned about some possible weather this evening, as everybody's aware of, but we're told that the health department is going to be able to continue forward with that for tomorrow. So we're very grateful for that. It is a work day for our teachers because of this event, and because of the weather, we've decided to make that a work day from home as they also go to make those appointments for their vaccination to help keep them off the roads. Thankful for all the reports this evening, and a lot of the information we heard about looking how students are doing for second 9 weeks, which ended in January, and then having the new programs in place starting in January for third 9 weeks. And it's good to see almost 1,000 students in middle schools and high schools taking advantage of that 4-day week, and I believe they reported almost 300 in fifth grade. And we need to keep moving forward. And so, just as we've started to hear some good news in terms of the COVID numbers, We want that to continue to head in the right direction. We're hopeful and optimistic, and if the community will continue to help us with that, ask for everybody's help. We're hoping those numbers will be in a good spot. We're already making plans, working with our principals for fourth 9 weeks to see what else we can do. And we've asked them to say, to look at our hybrid students, if we could bring as many of those hybrid students in, 4 days a week for fourth 9 weeks, what would that look like? And so we're just asking them to gather that information to assess. We've sent out a staff message and message to our parents this past weekend, letting them know that we're going to explore options for fourth 9 weeks and hoping to do some really good things, to continue to bring as many students back in person as we possibly can. So we're going to we're hoping to have that information to present to you at your work session on March 2nd.
All right, thank you. Any board members, comments, inquiries?
I'll go first tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Talking with a friend earlier this week who has a senior in high school, and he was, I asked him about how her year was going, and he said that overall, great as far as grades go. She's making straight A's, and that part has been fine. His biggest concern is the social isolation and the number of friends that she's lost in this year, not being able to be in school and see the friends that she's had. She grew up in all 13 years in Roanoke County schools, but he noticed his biggest concern as she gets prepared to go away to college is how the past year is going to affect her. And so anything we can do, again, for these students. And I think we're headed in the right direction. I truly do. It's encouraging to see these numbers continue to go up. I think we've made decisions that have allowed us to get more kids in the classroom, and I'm confident we'll continue to make decisions like that. As for tonight's decision, no board members take these decisions lightly, and I know it's not going to please everybody. My decision was based on what I feel gives us the best opportunity to get as many students back into the classroom as possible, and at the end of the day, that's going to be my goal, because that is what I think is going to be the most important. So thank you to all the students who took time to write us the little notes here for School Board Appreciation Month, and Oak Grove, especially Oak Grove and Green Valley for the gift bags. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll kind of just, I think we had a speaker. One of the speakers tonight said nothing about this year has been fair, right? I mean, I think we can all agree to that. It hasn't been fair to the people who've lost their lives because of COVID. It hasn't been fair to the people who jobs have been displaced. It hasn't been fair to the small businesses that have gone out of, that have shut down. So I don't want to jinx ourselves, but I feel like we are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. As Mr. Linden said, I mean, I look at these numbers and the things that that the staff and the schools have done, is the correlation between the positive cases versus exposures. I mean, I think everyone's to be commended there. And, I don't find myself, I love you, Mr. Linden. I don't find myself saying this a whole lot, but I agree with you wholeheartedly on the, the decision on the sports, right? I mean, I look at that decision and, my number one goal is to try to get as many kids back in the classroom as possible, but at the same time, giving our athletes an opportunity to play, even in a limited capacity, because I think if there's one thing that, we can take away from this year is we've had to make some compromises. And, in my mind, compromise is not a dirty word. Being able to come together and, come up with a plan. I know that not everyone's going to be happy, but, we're trying to do the very best we can. So appreciate the support of the board and thank you for all staff is doing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Mr. Linden said, we don't take these decisions lightly. These are tough decisions we've had all year. I mean, this is been going on, not just for us, but for teachers, staff, parents, students. It's been a very, as we always have heard, unprecedented times, unprecedented year. And, it seems like every corner you turn, there's something else that you have to address. And, I think everyone will be happy when we get back to whatever normal it'll be, at what time it'll be. And we continue to push to try to get our students back in school, back in face-to-face learning environment, because we know that is very important for a number of reasons that's been said already. So these decisions that we make, as you can tell, I know we live, I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about, what's going on and what we're going to do and what decisions next and how we're going to face that. And I'm sure we all do. And so we don't take them on a happy note, I was able to go to Green Valley last week for a virtual award presentation. This was after school hours. And the 5th grade, and we were able to, they won the awarded the Marlene C. Scott Curriculum and Instructional Leadership Award by the Virginia Children's Engineering Council. And I understand that they'll be coming at our next meeting to be recognized. Is that correct, Mrs. Hogan? And we will be able to honor. With that came $1,000 scholarship, and I think they're using it for technology or they're whatever they may be using it for. But it was very exciting to go, and we look forward. That's Ms. Bradshaw and her group over at Green Valley. So thanks again for the these recognitions that these kids do, and the special individual notes that they write. And you can see one has an ice cream cone on the front. So, and it's really, I still got the ones over the years. So, it really means a lot to us, to this board, that we're recognized by the students. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Greenway?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank all the schools. I know nobody's here, maybe somebody's watching, but thank you for thanking us is kind of embarrassing because, as I've said this before, and I'll say it again, it's our civic duty, and it's to me, it's all the staff and administration that do all the work and educate our kids. And Roanoke County is lucky to have each and every one of you. So thank you. So a couple quick things, and y'all hit on them on the sports. I've heard the word hypocrite because we allow, to play in the region and states after the season's over, and I guess that's winter sports. And, now we're back to in-county for our fall sports, and then we'll reassess and do something for spring sports. But to me, I'll take the title of hypocrite any day that gets more kids back in the school and gets them back in as quick as possible. That's my end game. So, when I vote up here, and I know the other board members think the same way, we've had disagreements over the past year, but we've always been in agreement that we want the kids back as quick as we can, and it's it's always been cordial, and we're together on this. So while I'd love to open up everything and try and rally the troops to do such, I think we're on the right course. We can control what we can control, and do the best we can to get everybody back in school. And at the end of the day, probably 98 or 99% of our students will never receive $1 to go to college to play, but that education can mean a lifetime of good to them. So that's where we need to focus. And Dr. Nicely has told us that, hopefully we'll have a plan March 2nd at the work session to talk about, maybe getting more kids in classes, and that's where our focus and my focus is at this point. Real quick, just two other little points. One, Representative, and is it Bill Stanley? I can't remember. Bill Stanley brought a bill before a committee, and it's the first year it got through on rebuilding infrastructure in schools, and especially schools that are in disrepair, maybe in extreme southwestern Virginia, and maybe in some inner city areas. And I, for one, am glad to see that get through. I hope it gets bipartisan support. I hope our representatives locally will champion it, and if it needs to be tweaked, that's fine. But it shouldn't matter where you're born. I've said this before. It shouldn't matter where you're born as to the education you get. That's you talk about the height of stupidity in a society. To matter if you're born in a poor area, you get a poor education, as opposed to if you're born in a affluent area, you get an affluent education. Just doesn't make sense, and it shouldn't. We're in the United States of America, and we should be able to fix that and make that right. So I hope that that gets traction. Last, and I think Mr. Butzer, let me just say, Mr. Butzer, too, thank you for leading us in this, what I'm going to talk about now. You've done a nice job. Sometimes, we've wavered a little bit, or we've stayed on a path that what I'm going to talk about is BCAT and 2 elementary schools that should have been fixed years ago. We're going to hear some discussion and over the next weeks, and maybe Mr. Butzer is going to speak to that now, and I'm going to let him have that thunder. But it's time. We've given our counterparts 2 years to move the needle, and it hasn't happened. And I thank you for getting us to this point. We need to let the citizens tell us what they want to do, and if this is it, we need to get it done. I think it's good for education, especially in today's climate, and I think it's good for economic development for workforce. So we need to rebuild BCAT. That's what I'm talking about, and 2 elementary schools that are antiquated and need to be fixed. So thank you, and thank you all.
I will have much more to say about the school construction plan that we put forward, but I'll do that at a later time. Thanks, everyone. Meeting's adjourned.